Hey man, say what you want about Draymond and how he was playing with fire last night in that incident that maybe he didn't initiate. I don't know. It's hard to say. After that took place, it seemed to give the Warriors the juice, the fire, the motivation they needed to put their foot down on this depleted Memphis Grizzlies team. Now, obviously, I've said, hey, I think Draymond should rest. The back's bothering him clearly. I think it was clearly bothering him last night, but I will give him credit that I think he was trying to push through it more than we had seen in the last handful of games. He was running the floor hard and just giving a better overall effort, even though it looked like he was in pain, right? And I think that that's actually probably the root of that little dust up with Aldama and then Bain was he was frustrated that he couldn't contest and defend like he knows he can. And then Aldama, and let's face it, Memphis, the league knows he's on thin ice. And so any opportunity they get to perhaps bait him, they're going to take it. And I don't know, did he go too far? I don't know. Give him a little stiff arm, tried to keep the distance. That's probably a smart thing to do. And then Desmond Bain, who I guess now is the veteran leader on this Grizzlies team, started to run his mouth. But shout out to GP2 for getting his Van Gundy on. Because I think I've talked about this in the past, right? The Warriors teammates, they have to protect Draymond in those circumstances. They've got to physically remove him, the proximity, so these incidences don't escalate. And you saw GP2 he was doing the Van Gundy thing. And then when Jenkins went down, it was like, right? But thankfully, no harm, no foul, essentially, right? Double technicals, and even Bain and Draymond seemed to kind of squash it and dap it up. So I credit Draymond for not letting it boil over, as well as his effort. But it does look like he's still in pain. And I think the real test for Draymond was it's not last night. Okay, he played harder. How does he feel today? What was the cost of it? He even had a dunk, right? As soon as he did that, I was like, I don't know if you're gonna regret that one tomorrow, right? Today. But yeah, man, they took care of business, and it seemed like that was the moment you could circle where they took over. They pushed it to 10 at the half, and then we get a vintage third quarter, and you had both Steph and Draymond end up only playing 24 minutes. Right. And, we sit here with 14, 15 games left in the season, and clearly Steph and Draymond are depleted and worn down. Right. And you say we've leaned on them too much at this point in their career. And that's true. But that's the other element of it is we haven't had games like we did last night. Usually you have a handful of 25, 30-point blowouts where Steph and Draymond they only have to play 20 minutes. And the stat already, we've led the league in clutch minutes. And so those are more exerting minutes than typical minutes that add on to this marathon of a season. Couple of thoughts on last night's game, though. One, I want to bring up GP2 because I've kind of taken a wait and see approach. I haven't wanted to quite bring it up yet. But since his return, he's been in and out of the lineup so many times, and I thought maybe it had to do with like a rhythm thing, and maybe it still does, right? But have you noticed all of a sudden GP has become just a foul magnet, and not in a good way, right? And some people on Twitter suggested, is he losing a step? And because what doesn't really make sense is we're all talking about the new physical NBA and the less whistles in these games you would think would lead to GP2 getting less fouls. It would be to his advantage. I think it's too small of a sample size to say he's lost a step or he's cooked, but it's something to keep an eye on these final 10 or 12 games. Hopefully he can remain in the lineup and catch a rhythm, because it's been very uncharacteristic of him to pick up silly fouls and kind of get beat the way he's been getting beat. But I think the bigger picture story from last night outside of the dust up was the Warriors leaning into and empowering Kuminga and Wiggins early. First possession of the game, Kuminga and Wiggins in kind of a two-man handoff game. They touch the ball, Wiggins scores. A couple plays later, Kuminga makes the extra pass, Wiggins hits another three, right? And you've heard Kerr and them talk about getting Wiggins more aggressive. We all understand that Steph is the solar system of this team. That's always going to be the case so long as he's on the roster. But that's got to be the recipe down the stretch here, is lean more into Kuminga and Wiggins and using their athleticism and ball screens, getting downhill, and then letting the vets play off that more. And I think you saw that early in this game, and it was a concentrated effort to do so. Now, the troubling thing is something that's not new, right? We all know this. It's like it's a running joke. What no-name player is going to have a career night against the Warriors? And Memphis is a tough matchup in the sense of you look at that front court with Jackson Jr., Aldama, and now Gigi Jackson, all go 6'9", 10, 7 foot, and they all want the three. And there's a difference, right? You can say, oh, he'll take the three, right? He'll take the three. Do you want the three? That's a difference. And Gigi and Aldama, they are shooters. Shooters. And we've seen it over and over again where the Warriors fail to recognize a hot shooter soon enough. They already have the size advantage. They're shooting over our low rotating guards. At a certain point, you got to sell out and run them off the line. And it felt almost as if Memphis knew. Obviously, they're very familiar with our system, and Jenkins is a very good young coach, but it was almost like they were told, hey, man, they're not going to sell out on y'all. Just catch in rhythm, like warm-up threes. It doesn't matter how deep you are. And it went on for too long in that first half. It took them too long to recognize we got to run Aldama off. We got to run Gigi off. But again, maybe credit Draymond for his spiciness, for a lack of better term, because that's what kind of seemed to flip the switch. Kuminga, after he had kind of a fall asleep play, right? He hit the nitrous button, and what did he have, like 8 dunks last night? You say play through Wiggins and Kuminga more. I'd also add Trace to that conversation because I think he can do a lot more in the short roll. I'm excited to see him in the Draymond role offensively. Now, you might say, where does that leave Draymond offensively on the floor? Well, maybe they won't be on the floor at the same time, or he can be in the corner, run the floor a little more. But I think Trace has a lot in the bag in that short role, and you give him some experience, some chemistry, even with Steph. You see it with CP already in Clay. He's going to be able to not just make the skip pass, the dunker pass. We know his vertical spacing. He's so much more of a threat than Draymond to finish himself. I think it ultimately puts even more pressure on the defense. So I'd like to see Trace in more of that short roll action moving forward. Clay looked like Rip Hamilton last night, right? 1-2 dribbles to the mid-ranger. It's been a thing of beauty for him the last 10 days or so, and I just hope that he keeps rolling with that mindset. So maybe it took a little longer than you would have liked for them to kind of get a comfortable lead, but ultimately low minutes for the vets and kind of a feel-good performance for the young guys. You got Indiana coming in Friday night. It's not going to be as easy. We know what type of offensive output they're capable of. And again, I'm curious to see how Draymond feels after playing so hard last night. And Steph, let's be honest, he didn't seem very engaged last night. He only took 9 shots, and I'll credit him for not forcing the issue with it. He wasn't engaged. We're going to need a lot more of an engaged Steph Curry against Indiana Friday night, and certainly in Minnesota Sunday. As always, hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.